Medicine is actually one of the highest suicide rates within professions and also within medical professions in the country because of how difficult it can be and the pressures that are there. So there's a lot of people either coming into the profession and leaving, whether it's via burnout or by other means, or there's a lot of people having difficulty getting into the profession. And then when we talk about diversity in profession, that's a whole other ball game as well, like why there are maybe few black people in the profession or few ethnic minorities inside the profession as well.
What misconceptions do you hear or come across when it comes to veterinary medicine? To kick things off, I was looking into your background a bit and just looking into the profession in general. And what I come across was that, which I didn't know, was that there's a shortage. It looks like there's a shortage of vets in the UK. It's just in healthcare in general, because we hear about it in the NHS with doctors and nurses and stuff, and that's something that we hear about all the time. I didn't know it was stretched across all these different spheres in healthcare. Why do you think that is?
So I think our pressures, I think our pressures are slightly different to human medicine. So like the human medicine, obviously you have the NHS available. And so there's a program available in which doctors are enrolled into and then disseminated around the country. And there's several medical schools across the country, and so people can apply. And I think vet medicine, we also have a shortage, but it's not for the same reason that the NHS is. NHS, there's just compared to hospitals available and people available, there's not a match for the doctors and the actual number of people, so that's why the shortage is there. In veterinary medicine, it's similar. There are a lot of pets. There is almost a willingness of people to want to go into profession, but there's not enough vet schools. So we have when I started, it was about 6 vet schools. I think now there's opening of a 7th and an 8th vet school.
In the UK?
In the UK, yeah, in the UK.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, exactly. In the UK, there's 8 vet schools in the UK. Back when I applied, there was 6. And to get into it is very competitive, because each cohort is probably about 100 people in a class, 120 maybe, I think, in each class. So and you're talking about people applying across the country. And some of these schools, they're quite difficult to get into. We've got the Royal Veterinary College, you've got Cambridge, that can be quite difficult to get into because you've got additional exams you need to do in order to get into them. And then 2 of them also in Scotland as well, so that's Glasgow and Edinburgh. So based on our geography, that's already making it one part that's hard to get into the veterinary medicine sphere. The next reason is that veterinary medicine itself has a bit of a problem in terms of, one, because we're not publicly funded, there is a lot of pressures because it's a private enterprise. So veterinary medicine isn't something that is off the taxpayer money. It's something that people have to privately fund. So a lot of things are expensive. And so the actual provision of care becomes quite difficult. And so due to that, there's a lot of pressures within the job, and I'm sure we'll get into it probably later, but there's a lot of pressures within the job which cause a lot of burnouts within vets. And actually it has a very high suicide rate. So veterinary medicine is actually one of the highest suicide rates within professions and also within medical professions in the country. And there's a very high suicide rate just because of how difficult it can be and the pressures that are there. So there's a lot of people either coming into the profession and leaving, whether it's via burnout or by other means, or there's a lot of people having difficulty getting into the profession. And then when we talk about diversity in profession, that's a whole other ball game as well, like why there are maybe few black people in the profession or few ethnic minorities inside the profession as well. So, yeah.
I learned a couple of things right off the bat. I did not know. I mean, you spoke about pressure in the job, and you've spoke about that on your social media, and then before we start recording as well, I didn't know about the suicide rates, but I guess it sort of ties in with what you're saying and makes sense in that regard. I was looking at something on your socials, and you spoke about so with the veterinary care can be quite expensive because it's not publicly funded, and then people think that vets are out to make money.
Yeah,
well, you're not doing that. You're doing just trying to do what's best for the pet at the time.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering now, so if you look at that, so trying to do what's best for the pet and everything like that, but also all of this pressure and crazy, high pressure work environment you're working within. What's been the most rewarding, or what is the most rewarding part of your job?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I love my job to bits. I think veterinary medicine is not the kind of job that you fall into because it takes a lot of time to get into it. Like any medical or any vocation, it takes a lot of time to build up the skill to it. So I really do love my job. And I think the most rewarding part is just the fact that I can genuinely make these animals better. Animals don't speak. So they're either sick or they're not sick. And you can see it quite clearly when they come in. So being able to solve and fix problems is probably the most rewarding part of my job. And I'm very much a person that thinks on doing and acting and actually trying to make change rather than like the bits around it. So that's why I'm a surgeon. So I love surgery. That's what I do. And I'm very much a thing of, okay, this can be fixed through surgery. So let's go to surgery and we can try and sort that out. Medically, we can also try and fix this and resolve this. But resolving it and making them better, I think is very rewarding. Then also the connection with clients as well, because we have a lot of clients that come in. I see a lot of clients and being a part of their lives from the beginning of when they get a new pet to some cases the end if I'm around long enough, or just sometimes being involved halfway through their lives and towards the end as well, or just being involved over a complex case or through a complex diagnosis. Being able to build that relationship and that relationship based on trust, it can be very rewarding as well. And seeing that you're actually making that difference in the world, like, gives me that sense of fulfillment.
Yeah, my younger brother, he wanted to be a vet when he was when he was young, like when he was a kid. Yeah, when we was all growing up, he wanted to be a vet. And I was talking to him before you came, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm interviewing someone that's a vet." And I was like, "I remember you used to want to be one." He was like, "Yeah," like he loved it.
Wow!
And not that it was discouraged. My parents never. I mean, in fact, they probably encouraged him. Actually, I don't know. I can't remember clearly. Yeah, it definitely wasn't discouraged, but he didn't end up going down that road. And, and now he works in a completely different sphere, and then he thinks that now it's too late to go back because of all the studying and all that kind of thing, etc., etc. What was your experience growing up? How did you get into it? And was it something that your family pushed you into as well?
Yeah, I mean, my route into veterinary medicine was quite a long and winding route because, well, I'll tell you from the beginning that I've always wanted to be a vet. So since I was young, I told my parents that, I want to be a vet. And it was from the onset, my mum said my first word was dog. So and I was always intrigued by animals. Like I used to sit down and read encyclopedias and watch nature documentaries, David Attenborough, all these different things, and just picking up all these interesting facts about animals. And then by the age of 8 or so, I kind of was looking at what universities to go to because all the universities have requirements. And it's weird because veterinary medicine is one of those things where you have to be perpetually thinking 5 years in advance of like what your plan is and how you're going to get to that next step because you have to always be proofing yourself 5 years forward. So
8 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine 8 years old. Yeah.
I don't know, playing football, watching cartoons.
Because I kind of got to this stage of where I was like, I want to help people and I enjoy animals and I put that together. And that was a vet. That was a rudimentary forming of the idea, right? And then, at 8 years old, I kind of looked at the universities, like what were the universities like? And I remember looking at University of Liverpool, Nottingham, Royal Veterinary College. I remember University of Liverpool particularly stood out because they needed a certain amount of work experience and they put that on their page. And so we're talking about 8, 9, 10, I'm looking at this saying that, okay, I need to get a certain amount of work experience. So I start gearing my whole life towards achieving these work experience requirements for this university. So when I'm working, so as I came into like secondary school, it was looking for work experience in dog kennels, in catteries, or on farms, in abattoirs, slaughterhouses, working alongside vets in practice, all that sort of stuff, just trying to find that littered amongst my education as well. And then in the education, because a lot of vet schools require a well-rounded student, they need you to do a lot of extracurricular activities. So I'm doing things like Duke of Edinburgh Awards. So there's like bronze and silver. I didn't do gold. And as I started growing, I started having more of an interest in science and medicine as well in general. And that was like more things that were motivating me and pushing me in that direction. And then we get to about sixth form time where it comes to applications. Now, by this time, I'd already done a school trip. So at this time, under my belt, I'd had 52 weeks of work experience. I'd done school trips. So I'd gone to Mount Everest. yeah, Mount Everest. We're not all the way to the top. So we went to base camp. Went to base camp, which was like a great expedition, a once in a lifetime kind of expedition. I was deputy head boy at my school. Obviously I had the 52 weeks and I was predicted A star AA. So all in all, I was supposed to have this glowing application. I'd written my personal statement. I got my personal statement checked by admissions tutors in Imperial. university because they come to visit us and that sort of stuff. And a lot of my form tutors have said that the personal statement was good. I'd send it to previous veterinary students as well who'd like helped me check it. And I had all these different feedbacks telling me that my application was good. You'll be all right if you can, like, you know, weather the course. And I'd kept my head down and tried to be focused for as long as possible. Then it came to applying, and you get 4 applications. But when you're applying for medicine, they tell you to apply to 3 places and have 1 backup. Which is not medical related, just something along the lines. So I applied to the 3 places. My first one rejected me. My second one rejected me. And I waited for a very long time. And then my third one rejected me. And I got rejected from every single vet school. I didn't even get an interview. Not even an interview. So they rejected me completely. And I remember just being down in the dumps about that.
Did you get feedback on why you were rejected?
Some of them said insufficient work experience, which didn't make sense to me because I had 52 weeks. I had reached the quota. And some of them didn't ever get back to me. I remember because I was trying to write. So I was just very, like, disheartened at that period of time.
It sounds like one of those like graduate jobs that ask for like 2 years of experience.
And you're like, but you're a graduate, so where do you fill it in? And so, yeah, that hit very hard. And I remember just moping around for a long time. And then I had this theory that I was going to go and take a gap year in between my results day up until the next year and then apply again. So as a start of my gap year, I went to India to go and work with vets in India for 8 weeks. Like it was an volunteer abroad kind of program. Went there and I was living in India for 8 weeks. And I came back after for results day. Results day came and I didn't get the results I wanted. I think at the time it was like AAB or ABB or something along those lines. And it wasn't quite what I wanted. And I was like, I might have to take this gap year. But I was feeling even more despondent at this point. I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it into this veterinary medicine thing. And then somebody came along and said that they need vets in Budapest. Or they need vets my parents used to say they need vets in other countries. And somebody mentioned Budapest and Hungary, about studying in Hungary. So I went onto the internet. My parents said, look into it. So I went onto the internet, looked into like how to get into University of Budapest. I heard about it, looked into it, researched it, applied, went and did an interview. And we're talking about in a 2-week window before the university actually started. Wow, so we're talking about like, it's August 25th or 26th when results day was happening. And the university in Budapest started on the 9th of September. So it's like a 2-week period. I'm doing all this stuff. And they tell me I can fly out to do the interview. So I fly out and do the interview. Budget airlines, the flight is super cheap. I'm taking a little suitcase. I fly out there. I do the interview. At the time I did the interview with the person who was the dean of the university, I didn't know he was the dean. And he's giving me an oral exam. He's like, yo, so answer this question, answer this question, answer this question. I'm answering them. And then he goes to me, so what would you do about accommodation? I said, well, if I got the place, I would look for this, that, and the other. He said, don't worry, you've already got the place. And I was like, whoa, wait, I've got the place? Yeah. And at that moment, my heart kind of did a little skip. Yeah. And from then it was just history. I came back home. I packed my bag, my suitcase. I hadn't even told my friends at this point. I packed my suitcase.
It happened so quick, hasn't it?
Yeah, it happened so quickly. And then I went back to Hungary. I was living in a hostel for the first 2 weeks of university. And then I spent the next 6 years there. And it was amazing. And that was my like road into veterinary medicine. And then I've come back home after 6 years. I actually planned to go to America. But then things happened. And then I've been home working for the past 5 years. And yeah.
You seem like a very disciplined person. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but you seem like, that's the vibe I get from one, you're 8 years old. Then you're research into what I've got to do. And then you make sure you've got X amount of experience, you've done X, Y, Z beforehand so that you're in the best position you can be from quite a young age, very young age. And also the vibe I get looking at your socials, you do your stuff, you do your fitness as well. And all that. You got your
regiment structure.
You got your regiment, but it's a level of discipline as well. But you probably enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy fitness as well, so maybe it doesn't feel so much like it. But then, in a way, it is because you've got to be able to wake up in the morning or make sure you don't miss too many workouts or whatever. And then, when I look at that side of things, and also you talk about your youth, knowing what you want to do, and making sure you put things in place to put yourself in the best position possible. Yeah. You seem like you're a very disciplined and driven person. Is that fair?
I think it's fair. It's a fair comment. It sounds weird. It sounds weird to say. I think it's a fair comment. No, I think it's a fair comment. I think discipline is one of those things that I generally trying to live my life by, is like structure and regimen. But it wasn't always that way. Like when I'm younger, you're young. When you're young, right? You're just here, there, and everywhere. And I have a Nigerian upbringing, so my parents are pretty like on it with how I was raised. They were, they're both very attentive to me, and I think I can thank my parents for everything. But they're the reason why I'm disciplined how I am. So it's very much of like, you know, you got to focus on your goal. My parents used to tell me when I was younger, if I'm watching TV and stuff like that those people have already made their millions. Go and sit down and, you know, focus. Gosh. Like, what is it that you want? You want to just be sitting down and be looking at people on TV? Go and figure out your thing. So it was this kind of thing of, it was focusing on what I wanted. My parents asked me what I wanted, and they just helped support me along that way. And I think that was the biggest thing about getting to the discipline, is just the fact that I had parents and people around me that enabled me to stay on that path. And, you know, I wouldn't necessarily find distractions because of how much I really wanted this long-term goal. Like veterinary medicine, if you ask anybody that knew me from when I was young, they always say that that's what I've always wanted. So it was just kind of following that goal. And then as I've gotten older, I understand the value of discipline and delayed gratification, especially with something like medicine, because to try and get into it, you have to know that, one, you're going to face a lot of rejection. Two, you have to just stick at it non-stop, like almost be relentless to it. And three, it pays off in the long run. So it's this kind of thing of, I've always had this mentality that if you work hard and you work long enough, there is a reward to it. You do reap what you sow, but you have to have your head down. You have to have the tunnel vision. And also, it also comes from a place of gratitude. And I was discussing this actually this morning on my socials. I just said it like this morning on my socials, but it's the fact that I have the opportunity to do these things. So who am I to waste it? Like, why would I waste these opportunities? Everything that I'm doing right now is a privilege. So who am I to take it for granted? So it's better for me to just focus. That was my mentality through vet school. My parents had sent me to another country to go and study veterinary medicine. So what's the point in me getting lost in all the parties and all that sort of stuff? I'm here on one mission, get my degree and come back home. So that was my thing of like, okay, well, I've got to study my books. I'm a big person of having fun, but my fun has to be matched with my work ethic, right? I have to work right and then earn that fun, and then I go back and work again, and so on and so forth. But also, it has to be a balance, you know.
If you could go back, if you had the option, and the choice at that point in time when you was 18, 19, or however old you were, applying for university, and you went to Hungary, if you had the option, would you do that again, or would you have gone to a UK school?
100% would go back to Hungary again.
What was it about the Hungary experience that was good?
There's something about being outside of your comfort zone. There's always something, and I think that's why I've enjoyed the process of getting into veterinary medicine, because it always put me in situations that are outside of my comfort zone. And when you come out of your comfort zone, when you lean into that discomfort, that's when you tend to thrive, because you see a part of yourself that you didn't know. Growing up in Hungary, you're isolated. You're not with people that you know. You're in a different country completely. You're mixing with so many different cultures. You have no choice but to adapt. And out of that adaptation comes a better form of yourself. And I think that's what I enjoyed the most about Hungary, was mixing with so many people from different countries, so many different cultures. I have friends that are now international, right? I have friends from all over the place. I saw so much. Also, the independence of being so far away from home was I think it benefits, and it built a lot of character, you know, because I was already renting flats at the age of 18, 19, you know. You're renting a flat in a city in Budapest. You have a landlord in a city in Budapest. I had to go and pay my bills in the post office, in the Hungarian post office, trying to figure out the Hungarian language and which one was the button I pressed to go and meet the concierge with the bills, and, you know, figure out how to pay that and their postal system, or like how to figure out how to get your residency permit, and doing that by yourself in another foreign country, like going to a diplomat office and having to have these exchanges in a completely other language. It brings a sense of independence and a sense of duty and responsibility. And I think because of that journey, I'm all the better for it. So yeah, I would 100% do it again. And I would also recommend everybody else to kind of chuck themselves out of their comfort zone in that way, maybe live abroad for a year or two, because I think it really does open your eyes.
When you talk about the career, work as a vet, and the pressure, like the hard work and the pressure, that kind of thing, obviously it's got to be something that you really love and enjoy. Otherwise, you're going to struggle. You're really, really going to struggle. And I mean, obviously, you've got to love and enjoy anyway to go through the studying process in the first place. But when you're on the job, the toughness of it as well. Yeah. What's the lack of reality? What does it really look like on a day-to-day
basis? I've tried to kind of encompass it in so many different ways on my social media to try and explain to people what it's like to be a vet. And I think it's difficult for people to grasp the responsibility. But with human medicine, you have several different sectors. You have opticians for your eyes. You have dentists for your teeth. You have ENTs for your ears, nose, and throat. You have your GP that you can go to. You can go to the hospital. You see A&E, etc. You even have paramedics. You know, there's all these different facets that take care of human lives. When it comes to veterinary medicine and animals, everybody who has an animal, the animal needs all those things. But as a vet and a GP vet, I'm all those things in one. So I'm doing obstetrician, I'm the pediatrician, I'm the one who does the ultrasound, I'm the one who does the surgery, I'm the one who does the teeth for dentistry, I'm the one who will talk to you in the consult room, I'm the one who, you know, so I'm doing all of that. So your pressure is that you become this multifaceted person that is responsible for all aspects of the pet care. And especially in countries like the UK where we have I think people generally love their pets, and we have such a high regard for our pets' lives that we want to do anything to help them live longer, that pressure becomes even more. And then when you start paying out of your own pocket and not publicly funded, that pressure becomes even more. So I think the best way to even describe it is, I can give you a scenario instead. I used to operate on Monday mornings. That was one of my things in my very first practice. I used to operate on Monday mornings. And operating on Monday mornings means that you see all the emergencies that have been in the weekend, because we're not really open on the weekend. So usually some people either go to the out of hours vets, or they would wait, and then Monday morning they'll come in. And I used to start at about 8 o'clock. So I used to try and get to work for 7:30. And I remember my drive used to be kind of bring myself zen, because I knew that madness was about to enthrall. So I'd get to work, and I remember I had my coffee mug, and I'd walk in the back door. And I remember walking in the back door, I was just about to take a sip of my coffee. This is at 7:25. I've even got in there a little bit early, thinking, okay, what ups do I have to do? My receptionist runs to the back. She sees me open the door. She's like, Bolu, stop whatever you're doing. A dog has been kicked in the face by a horse.
My goodness.
So you're like, okay. So you put your coffee down, and then from that moment, it's go time. And the thing is that dog wasn't even on the list for things that I had to do that day. And it's coming early. So that already offsets the whole day, because people are going to show up at 8 o'clock waiting for their appointment. But now you've got somebody that's coming in as an emergency, and I need to sort that out now. And you've got the idea of, first, in my head, I need to triage what's wrong with that dog. Can it walk? Is it stable? Does it need to go under anesthetic? How do we diagnose that? But two, with every patient, there is a carer attached to it. So the owner is going to be really distraught. They're going to be like, my dog's just been kicked in the face by a horse, da, 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 da. I have to talk to them about costs. I have to talk to them about what my plan is. I have to talk to them about all those things. And that all happens within 10 minutes. So I have to be like, okay, straight to them. Okay, this is what this is. I need to run this test. This is how much it costs. We need to admit Fluffy for so-and-so x-ray, and then work out the plan. And in the meantime, I've got people waiting. And if you're talking about in practice, I've got a consult every 10 minutes. So I'm seeing maybe 6 people in an hour. So the drain is just like, you're constantly go. So you're just back to back. And that's the intensity of what it's like to be in vet medicine, because one could be an emergency, the next one could be vaccinations, the next one could be very sick, the next one could be death. It's, this constant conveyor belt. So, yeah.
When you spoke about at the start of this answer, you spoke about having to be all-encompassing. So doctors, you got your neurosurgeon and then your cardiovascular doctor, whatever. They all got different, very specialized things. And that was something I did think about, because I was thinking with vets, I'd never heard of anything like that. You just, whatever animal comes, you're just the person you're expected to be the expert on it.
Yeah.
And you just need to be able to deal with whatever. And every animal is going to be different and have a different makeup and everything like that, and how you'd handle and approach. It'd all be completely different.
Exactly.
Is there pressure as well to stay on top of like learning? Because I can imagine you can't know everything. Because in medical school, you go you learn for 6 years or 7 years as well, but then you got very specialized. First of all, just on humans. Second of all, on a very particular thing.
Yeah.
You're studying for a similar amount of time, but you need to know a wider range of things.
100%. Yeah.
Is there pressure to keep on learning as well on the job? Is that something you're expected to do?
Yeah, there's always pressure to learn, I think, and it also depends on the individual, right? And I say this to everybody, which is why even when you go to a doctor, you should always seek a second opinion, because your doctor's opinion and information is only good as them as an individual, right? Because if they have the penchant to learn and seek and have curiosity, then they're likely to give you a broader set of diagnoses, right? And if your doctor is well read, then they can give you a broad section of diagnoses. Rather, if a doctor is narrow focused and has a lot of confirmation bias, they're just going to let you down. And if they're the type of doctor that doesn't want to continue learning, they're just going to let you down. So the kind of person I am, I want to be able to solve as many problems as possible. It's a perfectionist attitude, and it can be detrimental, but I want to solve as many things. So for me, it's always that idea that I need to continuously learn, continuously progress. And how do I go about bringing the best version of myself to the table? Because if I'm the best version of myself, then I can be the best doctor. If I can be the best doctor for my patients, or the best version of that doctor for my patients, then ultimately I can have the best possible results I can give. And then I know, regardless of what the outcome is, that I've given everything I can. We do still niche down in veterinary medicine. So we have large animal, small animal, and exotic animal. So some of us vets will be doing large animal, which is like farm animals. So that would be your cows, pigs, all that sort of thing. Then you have equine, which is another world in its own. So doing horses, and some vets just specialize there. Then you've got small animal like myself, which is mainly pets and companion animals. So dogs, cats, maybe some birds, rabbits, guinea pigs, anything that you can consider a pet. Then you have the exotics, where I have friends that do wildlife. So they'll go out and do wildlife, or they might just deal with like lizards and geckos and all that sort of stuff. And then when we're in those subsets, then we can niche down further. So you can still be like the cardiovascular surgeon. Well, not necessarily cardio, but cardiologists, neurosurgeons, oncology specialists, ophthalmology specialists, dental specialists. You can niche down further, but then before you niche down, you have GP in all of them, which is just general practitioner. And as general practitioner, then you're kind of doing everything, but you can niche it down. And yeah, depending on that, you can always progressively learn more. Like, for instance, I love surgery. So there's a lot of things I want to do towards earning my soft tissue and orthopedic specialism. But not just that, I'm doing a dental certificate as well, because I quite enjoy dentistry, but I enjoy maxillofacial surgery, which is just anything around the face, and tumors and corrective surgery around the face, and solving that. So that's like a specialist thing that I'm learning towards. So there is that. If you want to be a better doctor in a way, you do want to specialize. So you do want to continually learn and push yourself. Because what is it? Jack of all trades and a master of none. Yeah. But a master of one is better than a master of none. So yeah,
for sure. People in general are very attached to their pets.
Yes.
Very generally speaking, people can be very attached to their pets.
Most definitely.
In the same way like a parent would be attached to their child, like very strong attachments. And then when you come to the NHS, like you said, it's publicly funded or whatever, so there's never any, well, maybe there is, but there isn't really those kind of difficult discussions around the money. There isn't anything like, oh, you're just going to have to cost X, Y, Z, etc. Blah, blah, blah. It's going to happen. Maybe it's more a time frame issue, but the money is being paid for.
Yeah,
is very different in your field of work. How do you approach those kind of, especially when you know like it's going to be a high bill? How do you approach those kind of sensitive conversations with your clients that come to see you?
And I think that's all very individual. That all comes under bedside manner and tact. You as an individual, how do you communicate? I think with the NHS, like you said, money's not necessarily the issue. The issue becomes resource and being able to provide those things of care. Whereas in veterinary medicine, that's a problem. Resource and providing those things, but also the cost has now become an issue. One thing is advice from early on. So when I see them at the beginning of their pet caring stage, like early on when they bring them in for their first health check, first vaccinations, insurance. Insurance is your safety blanket, right? That's the first thing. So a lot of people find it difficult to afford insurance. So if you can't afford insurance, I say putting money away for a rainy day, like an emergency fund. Having that. But then you get the stark reality of, especially now more than ever, cost of living crisis, people have their pets, but can't necessarily afford to maintain that ongoing care, especially when veterinary medicine has now been infiltrated by larger corporate companies and also private equity have found their way into veterinary medicine. So it's increased the cost of a lot of care that we're providing. So it now puts us at a pinch point, and the vets are right in the middle of that pinch point. When it comes to having those conversations, it's about discussing options. That's the best way I found to do it is, look, I know that somebody might come to me because their dog needs a fracture repair or a very sensitive soft tissue type of surgery. That sort of thing is expensive. I now have to give them the stage of the options without trying to compromise the care. So I'm like, look, we could possibly do X, Y, and Z. This is our gold standard treatment. If you can't afford that, we might have to cut corners in this place in here and try and do this. If we can't do that, then let's try and do this. But I'm always trying to find a way. Not all the time do vets try and do it, but I'm always trying to find a way that at least let's try and stop Fluffy from being in pain. Let's at least take away the pain, and then we can focus on staging treatment out. And that's the best way to kind of handle those things out. Because vet practices don't even do payment plans because they've been, and that's what I find quite difficult, because nowhere in life does anybody ask you for $5,000 out of nowhere on a day. You know, even like your car and things like that, you can still pay it off over a period of time. Even there's Klarna for so many things that people do and pay things off over a period of time. Whereas in vet practices, because of how many times we've been burnt and people just might, in some cases, just leave their animal behind, we have to almost find another way of trying to buffer that payment or take all the payment up front. So yeah, it's just talking to them and giving them options so it doesn't feel futile.
What misconceptions do you hear or come across when it comes to veterinary medicine?
That we're money grabbers. That's the thing. I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people, in general, there's this public opinion of vets that the vets just do it for the money, and you know that we're here trying to take people's money. We don't have control. Us vets individually don't have control. We are cogs within the wheel, and we're the client-facing people. So we're getting told that the price has gone up when really most of us got into the job to try and help the animals. And then what ends up happening is that because we're client facing, we have to now present these bills. And at the end of the day, that is our time. But sometimes some of these practices are making these prices so outlandish that it gets hard to even tell an owner that, oh, clipping your dog's nails is £25. That's ridiculous to me. It shouldn't be £25. That's ridiculous. Like, I understand it takes a level of skill to be able to clip nails, but it shouldn't be £25. Like, if anything, that should be like, you know, £3 at a push, you know? I understand if surgery becomes more expensive because, yeah, that takes a lot of surgical skill and that takes a lot of pressure. But they try and offset that in so many different ways and it doesn't make sense. And so because of that, there's this frustration with people because they're like, why should this cost so much? The only way that people link, because the information is not necessarily readily available, people make assumptions and then assume that because it's so expensive, the vets must be taking the money. And therefore the vets are the bad guys, but we're on the same side. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest assumption, and probably that it's an easy job. I feel like that's another assumption that maybe all we do
People
is
think that.
some people do. I think some people do when they don't have all the information, because they might think that, oh, you just hug puppies, or sometimes you get from the medical side as well that it's just an animal, so you get that side as well. And it's very backwards perceptions. So, but yeah, the more information you get, then people start to be like, "Oh, I didn't realize," and yeah, so yeah, so those are the common assumptions.
Nice. With so we know there's a shortage of vets right now, and obviously it's highly pressurized and that kind of thing. And that maybe I don't know what's happening on that side of things in order to try and increase the number. I don't know if there's been any concerted efforts on an industry-wide level or not, but. With you and through your presence and your social media, everything you do, I'm guessing that some people are probably coming across your stuff who either are in the profession or maybe not in the profession, who might be seeing you and start thinking to themselves, oh, wow, okay, maybe this is something I could viably do. There's a lot, you know, that common saying, like, if you don't see, you can't believe.
100. Yeah.
And I'm a massive believer in that. I'm a living, walking example of that. But there's things I would never, ever have considered if I'd never seen someone else do it. It's just you don't even conceive it.
100%.
Especially from a Black British perspective. I like I say, you're the first vet we've had on. I don't know any other
vets.
I literally don't know any other than literally making a trip there myself. I don't know any other vets personally. Maybe if I'd seen, or my brother had seen someone like you growing up, then maybe he might have made different decisions and decided to go on that path. I don't know. It's not nothing that we knew about when we were kids, when we were growing up. Do you come across people like that reach out to you on socials, or maybe just meet at events and that kind of thing, who watch your content and now maybe are considering going into the field because of the stuff you put out there?
100%, yeah, 100%. There's plenty of people that reach out to me, either they're on the path in that direction, they've considered it as a particular possibility, and they've seen it and they're like, oh, I can do it. In fact, I had a message just recently where a student was in it, and because of how rough vet school is, she was like to me that she was finding vet school extremely difficult, but every time she sees me posting, she says that, well, you seem quite happy. So I feel like I could make it, and it seems like it must be rewarding afterwards. And of course, I'll give them the reality of that. There is difficulty in the job, but it's rewarding. And I think just that alone, and I think that affirmation helps a lot of people. It helps me a lot. I mean, I didn't necessarily have role models in the field to look at, and I think that's why I publicly put myself out there in a lot of things. And because I think I have a personality where I'm happy to be camera facing. I'm naturally quite a bubbly person. I'm happy to communicate with people. Some people aren't. That's not necessarily their strengths. But for me, if that's my purpose, so to speak, and just be a bit of a mouthpiece for the profession and just be outwardly facing so that I can showcase that representation, then I'll continue to do it, because I have helped people, giving them advice or showing them what to do, or created content for that particular person in mind to try and help them. And yeah, there might be some people that haven't told me, and there's some people that have told me, and I'm greatly appreciative of the fact that I can do that, because I'm just living my life essentially. But it's nice to be able to touch people through that same, inspiration, I guess. Just trying to inspire the next generation so they can come along and make a difference as well, and show them that it is possible.
So what's the ideal that you're working towards? What's the change that you're trying to see or achieve?
I think it's constantly evolving. In terms of what is it that I really want. For me now, right now, the ideal became something selfish over the past 2-3 years because of the altruistic nature of the job. I ended up burning out a little bit. My mental health took a fall, and I started to realize that there's no point in being so altruistic that there's no more of you left. So then it became a point of trying to practice something that I love doing sustainably. And along the way, helping people realize that they need to do the same to themselves as well. Because for me, what's strange is the idea that you can do something you love. And like I was talking about the suicide rate earlier, how does somebody spend so much of their time doing something they love and then contemplate committing suicide? You spent your whole life doing something that you love doing. How do you do that and then contemplate taking yourself from the world? It's such a heavy thing to think about. And I just thought that those pressures are almost within. So it's just finding a way to balance it and looking at your mental health in a holistic perspective. And I think for me, the ideal is for the veterinary community. I think it's two sides actually. The veterinary community to see vets more than just the vets that they are, right? That they're human beings that are actually functioning and actually need breaks and need a way for the governance to be divided and the pressure to be divided. And then the other side is for the people that are outside veterinary to understand that vets are not just the people that you see and just ask a question. There's a human being behind that, and that human being's also a brother, a son, somebody else's best friend. They have a role to play in society. So just being able to share that very human experience, and also a lot of the joy behind it as well. But just to be able to share that very real human perspective, I think open people's eyes to treating people more humanely in that way. So. Yeah.
What did the burnout look like for you, and how did you know that you were burnt out?
I don't know, I was burnt out. It's pretty easy for me. For me, I used to ask myself 3 questions. Well, a series of questions, actually. I used to ask myself, how am I? And I had to answer it on a scale. So I asked myself, how am I? How am I doing mentally? How am I doing family-wise? How am I doing with my friends? How am I doing financially? And how am I doing in my career? So it was those 5 kind of aspects. And I give myself a scale of 0 to 10. Okay. And you're not allowed to say any 7, and you're not really allowed to say 5. The reason I say you're not allowed to say 7 is because 7 is like the mediocre of good. So you don't know what to do with a 7, right? And a 5 is just like bang in the middle. So you don't know where. So when you answer that question, if you gave yourself a 4, you're like, oh, that's not great. And if you gave yourself a 9, you're like, okay, that's pretty good. If you gave yourself a 6, you're like, you need some work, right? So I'd periodically check in with myself and ask myself that question. And And then it came to a point where my answers were getting a little bit lower or across the board. And work was the only thing that was like an 8. Right? But everything else was like, I'm not seeing my family, not seeing my friends. Financial was okay because of work, because the more hours you work, technically you get rewarded more, although we don't get paid overtime. And so for me, there was that one side where all these performance indicators, we could say, were quite low. And then physically how it manifested was I was spending 14, 15 hours at work. I'd get to work at 7:30. And because I was sole charge, I was the only vet in the practice, I would leave work at about 9:30, and there was a lot of responsibilities and things I had to do. I had 4,000 clients and it was just me working. So I was booked 8 weeks in advance. So even when emergencies were coming, I couldn't even see the emergencies because I was just so booked. So I was like, what's the point? And then if I'm at work for 15 hours and I can't see my families, what's the point? If I can't go to the gym, I'm not doing the gym, which is something that is something that I enjoy and makes me better. Again, what's the point? If I'm at a friend's house on a Friday, but I can't stay for their birthday on that Friday because I have work on the Saturday and the Sunday, and I still have work the following week and have to leave early, what's the point? I love my job that much. I'm happy to spend that time there. But if it cuts into everything else in my life, what was the actual point? And so I realized how much time I spend at work. And then what tends to happen when you spend a very long time doing something is you get tired. And I was getting tired at work, And if you start to feel that inkling of resentment come into your work, like I could hold a puppy and be like, it's just a puppy, and then give it back to the owner and just carry on doing what I need to do. I'm like, no, like it's a puppy, it's cute, right? Like you should be able to feel that. And one of the big things for me was I was in surgery, and that's when I really knew that I was burnt out because I was operating. And I had, the way my day used to be split was I would consult. So from like 8 a.m. till 12 p.m. I would consult, and I'd see people every 10 minutes for that block. So we're talking, 4 hours, you're seeing a person every 10 minutes, but I could see anywhere from 10 to 12 people in that space of time. And that's really draining because everybody's really asking you a lot of questions. You're looking for problems to solve, bish, bosh, back to back. And then 8 to 12 consult, 12 till 4 operate, and then 4 till 7:30, 8 o'clock consult again. So I'd just be like back to back to back. I did my morning consults. I went into my operations. I think I had about 6 operations that day. It was on my 4th operation that, sometimes when you're on autopilot and you're just kind of going, then all of a sudden you like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I was operating and I came out of my autopilot like, whoa. And at that moment in time, because of how tired I was like, am I doing, like, where am I in this surgery right now? And also I got worried at the fact that what if I've done something wrong just now? And if I've done something wrong in that situation, all I have to blame is myself, because veterinary medicine is very radical responsibility. You are responsible for your mistakes. So if I'd done a mistake in that surgery there and then, I'd have to have a discussion with that client. I'd be responsible for patient mortality or morbidity or whatever had happened in that situation. I was like, and then all that would come off the end of that is that, so why did you do it? I was tired. So why did you do it? The pressures, because I had to keep going. So I was like, no, this can't happen. And at that moment, I remember in that surgery, obviously I looked at what I was doing, everything was fine. But because I was so tired, I was processing the information in this different plane. And I stepped back and I was like, whoa, okay, I need to take a break now. Because now I'm just working and I'm working on autopilot, and that's not how it should be. I need to be invested in each and every case. How can I be in surgery and just because everything's on such a fast conveyor belt, I'm not even processing what I'm doing. I need to be processing, I need to be invested in every single case because I need to give them the best version of me. And so that's when I stepped back and then took time back and I was like, okay, I need time to breathe and just stop. And then I can come back and practice a little bit more sustainably.
With that burnout experience with you, so, and I hear what you're saying, and it resonates a lot, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that it probably does resonate with. People are working. A lot of people are working a lot, man.
Yeah, it's capitalism, isn't it?
It's capitalism, man. 101.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tired people out here working a lot, and then what makes it worse for some people as well, they're working a lot doing things that they don't even love.
Exactly.
They're just working, and they're tired and burning out. Maybe they don't even know they're burning out, but they're burning out. And what's difficult for some people is that if you're in that position and you feel like you're burning out, you feel like you're getting tired, whatever. You're stressed and all that kind of thing. But not everybody is able to take a step back, maybe
Exactly.
because of their commitments. Maybe they got some family commitments and they just
Exactly.
can't afford to take a financial hit, or maybe it's probably I think that's only going to be only
It's
thing.
most likely thing
gotta
is the
be
financial commitment. Yeah.
It's going to be financial. And then how, in that kind of situation,
Yeah.
how do you manage, maybe, or how, maybe there's a better way to manage your time or something like that? Like, how would someone like that deal with it? How do you deal with it now that you're back in?
I think the big part, so financially wise as well. So when you talk about financial side, the first thing for me, before even leaving my job, I knew that I had to have at least 3 months of savings away, like 3 months salary saved. Because if I had 3 months salary away saved, I can survive 2 months just doing nothing, and then that last month is like a backup plan sort of thing. So that was the 3 month salary. And I think the big thing about burnout per se is the reason why you feel burnout is because you feel trapped. You can't see the wood for the trees. You can't see any get out plan. You also don't feel like you're in charge of your own time or making your own decisions for yourself. And I think that's part of why it brings this looming despair, as if, okay, I'm under a massive rock now and I can't get out. So like you said, when you're in those situations, the biggest thing is about finding your autonomy again. My autonomy, for me to find my autonomy, was taking my time back, and that was radical. It was me just stepping away for a period because I just knew I need to just let my brain go completely. I'd asked for different situations and they hadn't responded. But I think it's finding the way to get your time back. So either discussing it with somebody at work, your higher ups, that you need a different type of structure in place so that you're not pounded with this responsibility, and so that can be divvied up a little bit, or looking for a more suitable role, right? Or maybe a slightly less intensive role. So there's one thing of finding your autonomy back, doing whatever you need to do to try and find some sort of autonomy and some sort of control. And that might not necessarily look like in work. It might just be using your free time differently. Because sometimes you're just so exhausted from work, you don't even use your free time. You can't, right? You just get so exhausted that you don't even use your free time. But it's almost intently like the only thing that was keeping me going in that time was being able to spend time with my family. Because every time I spent time with my family, it filled my cup, you know? And having them around me really filled my cup. And maybe not being too quick to just disappear from them, even though I had that work responsibility, because I knew that the longer I was with them, the more it actually filled my cup. Spending time going on walks, if I can, you know, detaching. Also, I'm a big fan of the fact that we go through stress cycles in life, and you also need to find ways to complete that stress cycle, which is an outlet, because you don't complete the stress cycle when you're stressed at work, you go to bed and you wake up and do it again. That's not completing the stress cycle. That's just perpetuating the stress cycle. You have to find an outlet. There needs to be some sort of outlet, a healthy outlet by means, because some people go to food and emotionally eat. It's not a healthy outlet. Sometimes cooking, spending time with people, exercise, movement is a really good way of expressing outlet to decrease that stress, because it naturally reduces your cortisol, reduces that adrenaline, takes away that fight or flight feeling. All those different things, focusing on things that make you whole again and shifting your priority, not necessarily on what the work is, but the wholesome things that make you human, I think is really important.
That's great. Love it, man. We got to wrap up in a bit.
Yeah, no worries.
But last question from me, actually, before you wrap up. If you can go back and talk to your younger self, is there anything that any sort of piece of advice you'd give your younger self when you was looking into getting into the veterinary medicine and going through the application process and all that? And yeah, is there what kind of advice would you give your younger self before you was to properly embark on this journey?
It's weird because it's almost like I wouldn't change anything, but I would tell my younger self to just stay the course, head down. It's weird because it's almost like I wouldn't change anything, stay the course, but I would tell my younger self to just follow it with unrelenting passion. Head down, keep following your passion, focus, stay the course, be unrelenting with it, you know, because your passion will shine through no matter what you do. Keep following your passion. Like, stay at it. Don't be demoralized. Be unrelenting. You face that hurdle because your passion will shine through no matter what you do. It will pass. Stay at it. You will get over it. Don't be demoralized. And should you chase that hurdle, the reward is even sweeter. So just, it will pass. Focus. You will get over it. Yeah. And should you chase it, the reward is even sweeter.
Have you got any final words for us?
Just. Nice. I would say, thank you for having me on. That's what I would like to say. Thank you for having me on.
Have you got any final words for us?
Commendable. thing that you're doing. No, I was saying, thank you for having me on. That's what I would like to say. Thank you, especially within the black community. A commendable, and I hope thing that you're doing. All the people that it needs to reach 1,000 voices, really change makers, especially within the black community. And I hope it reaches all the people that it needs to reach. Champion people, and really causes the impact that you want it to have.
Thank you for coming down. I
because
appreciate your
it's
kind words,
necessary.
and I appreciate you coming
We need
down
to
and sharing your story.
champion our
with us as
people
well.
and our
Very much
diversity as well.
appreciated. So thank you for coming to the podcast once again. Appreciate your kind words. I appreciate you coming down and sharing your story with us as well. We're out. Very much appreciated. So thank you for coming to the podcast once again. We had the amazing Bolu on the podcast. And for now, people, we're out. All right, cool.
Awesome. Awesome. That was nice, man.
Nice one. Thank you.
Thank you, man. How we doing for time?
Yeah.
Oh, 6:20.